What are the 5 most important personality traits for successful poker players? Hello, welcome to Dangerous Policy, a channel aimed at intelligent people wanting to discuss important issues facing life and society. My name is Crispin, and today I'm going to do something a little different and talk about the personality traits of various poker players and rank them. The 5 most important ones that people need to be successful in this sport. I just returned from the WPT in the Gold Coast, where I had the honor and privilege of speaking to many world-class poker players, people who are doing it as a profession at the top of their game. And I asked them all the same question. I said, look, ignoring skill and theory and all those obvious things, just looking at the people, who they are, the kinds of traits you could associate with them, what are those things that all truly successful world-class players have in common? And the responses I received were universally the same, basically. I asked all different kinds of people, and they all said the same things and gave me a high confidence that these are the traits that you need. So if you do play poker, or you have aspirations to become a professional, or really devote yourself to this as a way of life, look at yourself and compare your personal traits with this list, because I do see the overlap as being significant, and in my own observation, I would concur. Coming in at number 5, intelligence. There's no getting away from it. People don't like to talk about it, but the fact is the world's best poker players are sort of former chess players. These are people with extremely high IQs. They have usually, got qualifications in extraordinary fields of, microbiology, aeronautical engineering, rocket science, surgery, either completed those degrees or abandoned them once they, were making a fortune out of poker. These are people that are highly accomplished in other areas, doing highly complex technical analytical work. While it's absolutely true that, people of ordinary intelligence can win at the local casino or the local, poker leagues, can be trained to become good poker players, the best are highly intellectual, intelligent people that can bring a lot of brain power to the game, because it is fundamentally a game of mental acumen. Coming in at number 4 is related to this, and that is a process-driven mind. If you think of poker as a series of decision points, okay, so in a given poker hand, the first decision you make is whether to play your hand. If you decide to play your hand, are you coming in for a raise? If so, how much? And then these decision points apply throughout the hand with compounding effects. Okay, so if you make a mistake pre-flop, then you're highly likely to make a worse mistake on the flop, and then a more costly mistake on the turn, and then a massive mistake on the river, if we're talking about Texas Hold'em, because of these compounding errors. So when you are making a decision, a difficult decision, let's say whether to call an all-in bet on the river, one that is highly consequential either for your tournament life or for your cash game earnings, your ability to replay the hand in your mind, put your opponent on credible ranges, go, okay, they've made this bet. What does this mean in terms of what they're signaling? How does your hand look to your opponent? How capped is your range? What are you credibly representing? What are they representing? And what proportion of your opponent's range makes up value versus bluffs based on the way that the hand has played out so far. In other words, your ability to deconstruct what has happened in that hand, such as that you can credibly make a decision based on the variety of information that you've been presented with, is something that can only happen through process. You can't just sort of sit there and go, oh, do they have it or do they not have it? It has to be like a process of ranges, credibility, signaling of what you have, what they have, how likely do they have what they're representing versus what you're representing, and that can only be done through proper methodology. People can be trained to do that, and this is something that all the great poker players I spoke to kind of agreed with. They said, look, people can be trained to do this, but it certainly helps if that's the way your mind is constructed. Okay, it takes a lot more work to learn how to do that form of critical analysis if it's not the way you already perceive and learn and observe in the world. There is, to the extent that people have a natural talent, what we would call a natural instinct for poker, that's where it would come in, process-driven thinking. The third trait is habits. I've talked about this in the context of nihilism and the way poker players behave. You can break down everything in your life in probability. So the probability that your bus will be late, what impact that will have on the rest of the day, what kind of contingencies that you have to put in place to make sure that you get to work on time. All of that can happen in your day-to-day life. Poker players do this as a form of habit, i.e., they work out, okay, what proportion of my day do I need to spend studying the game? How am I going to record my hands? What am I going to do after each session of play in order to de-stress, in order to focus on other things? What kind of habits am I going to form in order to continue to make sure that my game progresses and builds on itself through a sort of a Pareto distribution? Good players have good habits. Also because poker life is such that it's very easy to lose control of everything, right? You don't have a boss telling you to show up to work every day. You don't have, obligations to be at different places. People can play whenever they want to. And thus, having that regimented structure to one's life, a high sense of personal organization, is critical, not only to being a successful player, but also managing life as a poker player when you don't have any of these external feedback mechanisms. Also, because poker has a high degree of variance, being able to retreat to one's personal study habits, personal analysis, personal focus and growth, discussing hands with poker colleagues, to do this in a routine way brings a sense of consistency to what is otherwise a highly variable lifestyle. And so good poker players have good habits. They're good at establishing those habits in terms of their diet, in terms of their exercise, in terms of their study, poker sessions and the like. 2 is discipline and emotional control. And I'm speaking here mostly at the poker table, okay? Good players lose most of their money because they're not playing to their best standard, okay? And I'm certainly as guilty of this as anyone. Tilt, whether it be because they're bored, because they've been, either made a mistake in a previous hand and they're still stewing on it, they got a bad beat, they're on winning a lot and they're kind of being a bit splashy, they're bored, they're just not themselves, means that people make decisions that are not based on their long-term expected value, based on however they're feeling at the time. There's a personal hand that they have a certain attachment to. There might be someone that has beat them in the last 3 hands and they have a personal grudge against them, want to get them back. All of these things that distract from good, fundamentally sound poker strategy are the death of poker. Right? If you fall into these traps, you've already lost. And if you win, you're gambling. Okay? This has, I think, cost more successful poker players more money than anything else ever. Right? It's just not being themselves. And to that end, this brings me to number 1. And this is the one that every single poker player I spoke to, highly successful, world-class poker player, said is the number 1. And I agree. Self-awareness. Self-awareness is the most important trait any poker player can have. self-awareness in terms of their emotional mental state. So are you tilting? Are you making decisions that are not in your best long-term EV interests? Do you have the discipline and ability to take yourself out of that situation, perhaps end a session early, to go for a break, do some meditation, find a way to refocus and orientate yourself. That's important, but also identifying your own weaknesses. Everybody in poker can be put on a kind of a scale, right? If you ask the question, who is the best poker player in the world? Well, that's a difficult question to answer, because then you follow up with, in what context? Are we talking six max online, live tournaments, PLO, all these different variants? There'd be different people in different situations, right? But there is nevertheless, in your personal preferred form of the game, a hierarchy, right? There are people who are the very best, right down to you, right down to the worst players, okay? And that means that you have to know where your strengths and vulnerabilities lie. There is nothing easier for a poker player than to attribute all of their wins to skill and all of their losses to bad luck and never identify where they are going wrong. Self-awareness is the ability to subordinate one's ego and say, here are the things that I suck at in poker. These are the areas that I need to focus on in order to reduce my leaks and improve my win rate. These are the things that my opponents are doing better than me, and know exactly where those things lie. I think that is absolutely the number one trait of successful poker players, and I think it is something that has been almost universally recognized. Now, there are other things as well that deserve honorable mentions. Being observant, having an observant kind of state of mind is very important. That improves your concentration. It allows you to identify the tendencies of other people at the table. You're not constantly distracted by your phone or conversations with other people, that you can actually focus on what's going on. That's an important trait. Bankroll management, discipline with money, discipline with moving down in stakes when you need to. These things are also critical. Hopefully that will give you a kind of a sense as to what a successful poker player looks like. You can kind of derive from that how you compare, what are your personality traits when it relates to poker. If you do have ambitions in the poker field, those are the kinds of traits that you'll need to kind of internalize and identify with. And as I said, some of those things can be learned, obviously not intelligence, but process thinking, habits. These are all things that can be developed, must be developed, actually. A lot of these things don't come naturally. And I wish you all the very best in your poker journey. If you found value in this discussion, and we have things that I haven't mentioned that you think are important, please leave them down below. I haven't mentioned skill, theory, all of that sort of stuff. I think that's a separate question. But do leave your own thoughts, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much.